In this video, we introduce the concept of social interaction. The title of this video is courtesy of William Shakespeare in the play As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Now, apart from the sexist language, for of course both men and women play many parts, this is as good a description of social interaction as you're ever going to see. There are three things we're going to cover here in this lecture. First, what exactly is social interaction? Second, we examine what we're going to call the building blocks of social interaction. Third, we look at the role of social structure in all of this. Okay, so what is this thing we're talking about here? First of all, it's about communication, not just between individuals, but also within groups. Sociologists observe how both verbal and nonverbal communication follow what we can call cultural scripts. The guarantee of social interaction, what makes it even possible, is the existence of shared meanings and expectations. For instance, when you give me a thumbs up on a text message, we both understand what that means. My favorite definition of social interaction comes to us from American sociologist Herbert Blumer: how human beings interpret or define each other's actions. Let's imagine you're having a conversation with a friend. Simple, right? Well, no, because while you are speaking to your friend, you are constantly monitoring their nonverbal responses to what you're saying, as well as their verbal responses, and you are modifying your communication style in response to those cues. Are you aware of all this as it's going on? Maybe a tiny bit, but it's all playing out in real time. Let's break down social interaction into its component parts. We start, first of all, with status. And status means a recognized social position. Student is an example of a status, as is professor, or even homeless person. Next, we have role, which is the way others expect you to behave in a given status. When I am in my status as your professor, you have expectations about how I will play that role. Maybe well-informed, maybe serious, hopefully fair, or whatever. And for my part, I am acutely aware of this as I am teaching. Finally, we have norms, which are generally accepted ways of doing things. All three of these building blocks reinforce each other in social interaction. So let's have a look at you. Your status in this course is that of a student. You probably occupy other statuses at the same time. Maybe you're working part-time, maybe you live with your parents, maybe you have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Even in your status as a student, you have more than one role. Here are some possibilities. Obviously, all of these are happening in a different way right now because of the pandemic, and some are not happening at all. All the same, one thing that jumps out when you look at being a student in this way is how easily our different roles can conflict with one another. Like, try to have a social life and work part-time and do well in school, for instance. Now we turn to social structure. And all we mean here by social structure is that social interaction isn't random. It's organized along patterned lines. Now, the term social structure might seem very abstract, and in a way it is. You can't look around you and see it. On the other hand, Everything about social interaction demonstrates the influence of social structure. But first, let's look at an example of social structure. This is actually an example that we introduced earlier in the course when we talked about research in Module 1, and it has to do with the connections between obesity and social networks. And you might remember this map of a social network according to the body mass index of people in the network. As Nicholas Christakis has proved, obesity is what he calls socially contagious. In other words, your odds of becoming obese are highly dependent on the people you hang around with. Here's another example of social structure. You've heard of the term manspreading, the tendency for men to take up more space than women in situations such as seating on a bus. This is an example of social structure because what underlies it is a pattern of inequality between men and women. In other words, the unconscious assumption that men deserve to have more space.